So today I'm joined with Connor Ashwood, who is a second year computer science student. Connor, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me here.
Can you name some challenges you face as a first year student?
Yeah, absolutely. So as a first year student coming into university, I didn't come straight out of high school. I came into it, I was 23. So a lot of the knowledge that they kind of expect you to already have, I didn't have or didn't remember from high school. I also didn't do very well in high school. So I used a bridging course and managed to get the mark I required to go into my degree. And then the challenges I've had to face is basically all the study and like exam preparation and all those habits that I didn't already have. Was basically trying to reinforce those. Now I'm a lot more routine based. I find having to learn the hard way, because I did not do very well when I first joined uni. But having to learn to just structure everything and like you really have to structure your life around universities too. A lot, especially with your studies, with like your lectures and stuff. But yeah, that's about it.
So in regards to those study habits, did you struggle with procrastination at any point in your degree, like particularly in that first year?
Yes, I did. I think every student goes through that phase where procrastination is always hot on their heels.
Next question. Have you used any organizational tools or apps to stay on top of your studies and make sure you meet those deadlines?
Basically, I mean, I don't really use too many like online apps. I do have a calendar that I have in my study, and I do use my phone in the sense of I like to have a lot of alarms that I edit most of the time to fit my needs, but I'm much more of I rather physically be able to see the calendar every day, whether I like it or not, rather than having to go and open up an app.
That's certainly another factor. If you sort of leave things to the last minute, you're sort of forced to cram for long hours, and that can introduce burnout. Whereas if you sort of break things down and schedule it, you can very much approach things in a much better headspace.
Yeah, absolutely. I also find, at least personally myself, if I leave a problem, I'm still thinking about it in the background, even when I'm doing other menial tasks or like daily chores and whatnot. So a lot of, because I'm doing computer science, I have to do a lot of programming, and a lot of coding I'm finding is a lot of it is overcoming challenges, and like whether it be like I don't know how to do a certain thing yet, I don't know how to get the code to do what I want, and understanding those patterns and how code works and whatnot, a lot of that I won't immediately see. So when I leave studying and go and do other stuff, I do find that I'm actually thinking about it a lot in the background, and a lot of my assessments, like the breakthroughs that have got the code to work and like fix all those errors that kept spitting at me, a lot of those solutions have come from me cooking and like just thinking about it in the background while I'm cooking, or like doing the weekly shop and all that kind of stuff. So
good old-fashioned coder, that shower thoughts, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. So next question. Do you feel you've been able to effectively manage a work-life balance at university?
I feel I have now. I feel like I've gotten into a good place. Again, learning all those organisation skills, learning how to plan out your week. At first I didn't. It was quite challenging. I mean, I don't have work at the moment, and I am only studying part-time, so I don't have the same challenges as some other students. However, when I first started, I did find it was quite difficult to like structure everything, I guess.
You mentioned having registered with the university's disability services. If you don't find this question too personal, you don't have to answer, but can you name some ways in which this has helped you throughout your studies, and would you recommend these services to other students?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm registered with Accessibility. I didn't know about them when I first joined the uni. I think they actually reached out to me during I put something on paperwork about having to struggle with mental illness or something like that, and they reached out to me. So using what they offer, I was able to get additional time for assessments if I really needed it. even just like additional time of exams, special provisions of exams. I haven't had to use them very often, only because I do try to work hard and maintain the balance so I don't slip into procrastination and all that kind of stuff. But it's nice knowing that they're there. I feel like that's been the biggest help for me personally, is just knowing that I have that extra layer of support. However, I do know there would be students out there that would benefit a lot from the provisions that they do provide. Even just like personally, I really struggle with having to go and sit face-to-face exams. It takes me a while to really like get rid of all those exam anxiety nerves and whatnot, which just shut down your brain completely.
Yeah, I think imposter syndrome is something a lot of students really struggle with, and it can sort of intimidate students to like have to ask their lecturer. But yeah, you don't really need to be afraid of that as a first year student. It's not rational. They're there to help.
Yeah.
No one at university is judging you if you did open foundation or anything like that.
Yeah, they're too busy worrying about their own studies to be judging you.
Yeah. Especially lecturers who are always working on their PhDs. Did you have any trouble acclimating to any of the university's online systems, like MyUON? We've gotten rid of Blackboard now. I think it's Canvas.
Canvas, yep.
Yeah.
Since I joined university at the start of the pandemic, I have kind of become very accustomed to everything being online and having to use Canvas and Blackboard and whatnot. So I can kind of... It comes a bit more naturally to me, having been exposed to it for longer than a lot of other students have had to. So I haven't had too many difficulties using them and whatnot. However, I can see, because I have heard that there's quite a few bugs and like just user-friendly issues and whatnot, especially for students that might not have as strong a technological background or like be as exposed to it, especially if it's like a mature age student and whatnot. So there is a lot of things that I could see that they could improve on, just because, like, especially thankfully we've gotten rid of Blackboard. I feel like Canvas is a bit better in the way that it presents things, because Blackboard was confusing, a lot of clicks to get the information you wanted, whether it be exam timetables or assessment deadlines and whatnot, or things would be hidden away in nooks and crannies you didn't think to look for. So yeah, I personally haven't had too many issues, but I feel I could sympathise with the students that would have issues, and I think the best thing that they could do is try and make it as simple and to the point as possible.
I imagine you've spent the majority of your time in lockdown while studying.
Yes.
Do you think this has affected your ability to sort of network with other students and, say, perform group activities, like, say, forming a group for an assignment or something like that?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's definitely affected that. Uni has definitely not been what I expected it to be. On top of obviously wanting to improve and get an education, I did kind of want to use it as a way to network and meet new people and maybe make new friends and whatnot going into it. And thankfully COVID ruined all that. So I feel like it's been a blessing and a bit of a sort of, but also not so much, in the sense that it's a double-edged sword. So I did adapt pretty well to having to study in lockdown, but at the same time I had nothing to compare it to, because I hadn't studied for quite a while before, because the last time I would have was high school. So I adapted to having to watch all the lectures, whether they were pre-recorded or whether we're using Zoom and whatnot, and then having to do all our assessments online, or final exams being online and mid-semesters being online. So in that sense I adapted pretty well and quite enjoyed it. The issue is I didn't have much of a social aspect, as you can expect. So going back to the previous points of being able to like bounce ideas off students and whatnot, that becomes a lot more difficult. You do start to feel a bit isolated as well. If you start to struggle, like you start to be like, who can I reach out to other than my lecturer, who I'm just sending an email to? So it does become difficult in that sense. You really have to make a lot more of an effort to try and connect with people, and a lot of other people are also feeling the anxiety of being in a pandemic, so they've got a lot of their own stresses and stuff on their shoulders, so they might not also be willing to make those connections. So yeah, I definitely think studying during the pandemic has affected my ability to network and make friends, or even just to hang out and like just know that there's other students out there suffering as much as me with my studies. Like it does get a bit isolating. And going back to my original point, like I've adapted pretty well to online study. However, now that we're coming into doing more face-to-face stuff, by no means is the pandemic through of us, but we are starting to move more towards face-to-face study again. I actually feel like I'm under prepared for it, because again, I adapted very much to having everything online, so everything going face-to-face, it's a bit of a shock to my system. I'm sure I'll adapt and be fine again, but again, that's where it comes down to that double-edged sword, where it was a bit of a boon because you're in your comfort zone, you can study at home and whatnot, whereas now that you're expected to go and be there for lectures rather than just watching on a laptop screen while you have a coffee watching TV, it's a bit of a shock to the system, and I imagine there's a lot of other students who are in my position that are also finding it difficult to adapt again back to being face-to-face.
Yeah, that's something I never really thought about, like coming at it from that perspective of not having studied face-to-face. Like I certainly, I had my first year, and I was totally unaffected by the pandemic for that entire year, and then 2020 rolled around, and everyone knows how that went. So it's very interesting to sort of hear things from that different perspective of acclimating to online study and then sort of having to move to face again.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge I didn't expect to be faced with.
Yeah. But anyway, I just wanted to thank you for your time and talk. I appreciate you talking about your experiences. There's a lot of first-year students who can probably relate, and it's always comforting to hear that other people are sort of going through the same things as you and listening to the strategies that they've employed to sort of deal with those problems. And I appreciate you taking the time to do this interview.
Yeah, no worries. I'm happy to talk about that kind of stuff. So thank you.
Thanks.